How's it going, everyone? It's Milwaukee coming back at you once again, and today we're going to be discussing Spawn Origins Collection Volume 2 by Todd McFarlane and some others. Let's get into it. We start off with issue 7, picking up right where Volume 1 left off. Spawn has some unfinished business with Overt Kill. After raiding an armory, Spawn slinks back to his bum-filled alleyways for a night's sleep, where he has visions of his killer, but he can't quite make out who it is. After having multiple recurring dreams of her late husband, Al Simmons, Wanda decides to look into the strange happenings that have been happening around her as of late. Spawn sets up a rematch with the cyborg Overt Kill for a showdown at the pier, and he sends Overt Kill to sleep with the fishes. Issue 8, Billy Kincaid, child killer from issue 5 of Spawn, gets a tour of the 10 levels of hell, or I should say the 10 Deadland spheres of hell, by the Vindicator, one of the famous 5 Fleabag brothers. I don't know, the guy looks like the Violator. I wonder if they're brothers. Probably, who knows. I'll find out later, I suppose. Issue 9, enemy of the hell Spawn, an angel, comes to Earth and does battle with Spawn. Issue 10, interesting. It's missing. For whatever reason, it's not in this collection. I'll touch on that a little bit more later. Issue 11, Spawn settles an issue between rival gangs, the Nerds and the Creeps. Issue 12, the government decides to set up surveillance on Wanda and Terry after Wanda has been digging around into Al Simmons' disappearance, and Spawn finally remembers the face of his killer. Who could it be? Spawn raids the headquarters of the Youngbloods, the famous Youngbloods. Have you heard of them? The Youngbloods. And he teleports Chapel and himself back to the Botswana swamps to settle the score. Ooh, Chapel was his killer, huh? Random. And then in the final issue contained here in this volume, issue 14, we get to Return of the Violator, where he tells tales of his heroics to uninterested children. Great stuff. You be the judge. Yeah, so that's Spawn Origins Volume 2 right there. First thing I will say is that the writing really took a step up. And I was like, damn, Todd's on top of his game here. But it turns out, as I was looking into why issue 10 wasn't collected in this volume, it turns out there were other writers on this book. Like starting with issue 8, Alan Moore. Issue 9, Neil Gaiman. Issue 11, Frank Miller. Nowhere in the book was I told that these were other writers writing these stories, unless you look at the beginning of the book where it gives like the credits. But that's easy to miss. So, yeah, I thought Todd was really bringing it. But it turns out he wasn't. Well, unless we're talking about the art, because he really did step it up for these artists. But don't take my word for it. Just look at this example here, and here, oh, and here. But don't stare too long. So yeah, I guess for the most part, Todd is done with writing Spawn. I looked ahead into the next volume. It's going to be, some other writers, including Grant Morrison. Then we're going to have Greg Capullo coming in, start drawing Spawn. So, Todd didn't really stick around that long on his own book, huh? But anyway, apparently issue 10 wasn't collected due to some creators' rights or whatever. It's available online. I found it, but I didn't read it yet in time for this review. I'm probably not going to read it. I don't really care. If it was important enough to be collected, it would have been collected. And even the start of issue 11, the very start of the issue says, let's get back to reality. So maybe that was just like a garbage issue anyway. So not too worried about it. And after reading Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and having to put up with missing issues, a missing issue here on Spawn isn't going to kill my interest in the run or whatever. So yeah, the art was top notch. The writing was better than in Volume 1. We get to introduce some interesting characters. The character of Angela, who was the angel who fought Spawn, and she fought like some old-time Spawn on a horse. The battle was brief. I guess it was like maybe a teaser or a taste of something that's yet to come in this upcoming war that's apparently going on between heaven and hell. We got to see, the serial killer, Billy Kincaid. He gets introduced into the Spawn army. He gets his own Spawn costume. So we get to see a little backstory on what the hell Spawns are and how the costume itself is alive. Pretty interesting stuff. One thing I did want to touch on is there's an abundance of cyborgs here in Spawn World. I wonder why that is. Overt Kill was a cyborg. Spawn kills him. And there's two cyborgs in the street gangs that Spawn tricks into fighting each other. And they end up dying. And I'm wondering if this having all these cyborgs is a workaround so that Spawn doesn't have to kill humans all the time. Makes you think. This volume also felt like a little weird because there was like, I don't want to call it stalling, but there was a lot of nothing happening. And then all of a sudden, boom, we fast forward to Spawn remembers who his killer is, and now all of a sudden we're off to the races with that, right? A little bit of whiplash. But the stalling, again, I don't want to call it stalling. You are learning stuff like the 10 Spheres of Hell. Pretty interesting. All the stuff with Angela and her background, with the angels, how they hunt the spawns. Again, pretty interesting stuff. But the story wasn't really moving forward until all of a sudden it was. And then we get this reveal that the killer is this guy named Chapel, who's a member of the Youngbloods. You're like, come on, enough with the Youngbloods already. And it just feels random, and it doesn't feel satisfying. Spawn gets his revenge, technically, but he doesn't kill the guy. He just scars him. And I guess we'll see what happens going forward. Although I'm not going to read Youngbloods. So hopefully it doesn't take place in that book. And then we got the one random issue with the Violator. That's, I guess, a multi-part story that's going to lead into Volume 3. So we'll see what happens with that. It was kind of a funny story. But, I'm still wondering, what is the Violator? Is he related to that one guy from the 10 Spheres of Hell? They look the same, but I guess there's 5 of them, those 5 brothers. I don't know. I'm going to keep reading. Right now, I'm thinking that I'm going to give Spawn to issue 50. I want to get to 50 issues before I decide if I'm going to stop reading it or not. I'm intrigued enough to keep going. It's fun enough to keep going. But, once Todd McFarlane's off the book, the next volume, we got guest writers and guest artists. We'll see how it holds up and keeps my interest. But I want to give it until at least issue 50. So with all that being said, I'm going to go ahead and give Spawn Origins Volume 2 a 4 out of 5. Hopefully it's up from here, it's like a lot of setup. Things are getting interesting, but it's not quite there yet. Spawn's one of those legendary books. I think I'm just starting to get to see why. But like I said, I want to give it to issue 50 before I call it, here or there. So until next time, I'll see you there.